Yeah.
Call the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors April 24th meeting to order. Mr. Tucker's going to lead us in the invocation, and Mr. Norvig's going to lead us in the pledge.
Lord, please guide us in our deliberations and decision-making tonight, and bring down further blessings on our departing County Administrator, Pat Weiler, as she opens a new door in her life. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that all 5 Board of Supervisor members are present. We'll now move on to item 4, which is going to be the request to postpone, change the order, or delete anything from the agenda, and I do have some changes I'd like to make. We will move, just for this board meeting, we will move item 12, which is Certificate of Appreciation Special Resolution Proclamations, to the 6:15 or so time frame, which would be item 6 for us, before the public comment period. I'll move the public comment period behind that item. And I'll also make a motion that we remove item 13, B and C, ordinance to vacate the family division boundary line and to vacate the family boundary line on 2 different parcels. Those have been settled per our county attorney, so we no longer need to have a public hearing on those. And I also like to add on 12C, a resolution for our county administrator.
A second, Mr. Chairman.
A motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Those
Moved.
opposed?
Move to amend to approve the budget as amended. Not the budget, the agenda as amended.
We are talking about the
Getting
budget.
ahead.
Thank you,
Getting
Mr.
ahead.
Tucker, for, we can now adjourn and go home. No, just kidding.
It's going to be a short meeting. This is great.
So we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. We'll now move on to, we'll go and get the consent agenda out of the way. So we'll move on to item 8. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
A motion and a second on consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
I have to take a roll.
Oh, I apologize, Pat.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell? Aye. Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, sorry. Okay. We'll now move on to item 12, which is their Certificate of Appreciation Special Resolution Proclamation. The first one we're going to take, Ms. Cabell is going to take for us, is recognition of 2017 Powhatan County Clean Business Award recipient.
Would you like to come up?
So for those of you, the Clean Award winner is,
Yes, ma'am. Gay, would you like to come up? That microphone's really loud tonight. Come on down, Barbara.
and the winner, the Clean Business Award is Enlight Yogurt.
It's good to be here with you. Okay. This is a proclamation recognizing the 2017 Powhatan County Clean Green Business Award recipient, Enlight Yoga. Whereas an environmentally friendly and litter-free county sends a positive message and favorable image to our existing businesses and potential new businesses, and whereas the Chamber of Commerce sponsors an annual Clean Green Business Award, and whereas Enlight Yoga strives to make environmentally safe choices, recycles, upcycles, and uses natural renewable rubber yoga mats, and whereas using environmentally safe products, minimal energy use, and Enlight's Yoga's recycling practices make them not only a clean business, but a green business. And whereas the Anti-Litter Council, in partnership with the Powhatan Cooperative Extension Office and the Powhatan Chamber of Commerce, have initiated the Clean Business Award. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors hereby enthusiastically salutes Enlight Yoga as the 16th recipient of the Powhatan County Clean Green Business Award for its outstanding service to Powhatan County and for its positive impact on the quality of life for our county residents. I make that in the form of a motion.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Any comments? Barbara, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Board of Supervisors, for this honor of this proclamation. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you, the Anti-Litter Council, for giving us this award. And thank you, those of you that have supported Enlight all these years. We gratefully appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Yes, this is for you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Okay.
Behind the podium?
Okay.
Mr. Williams is going to take our second resolution, which is the recognized Building Safety Month. I think Brett, who's helped runs our building department, will accept this award.
Whereas Building Safety Month, sponsored by the International Code Council and International Code Council Federation, reminds the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown guardians of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings. And whereas the international codes, the most widely adopted building safety and fire prevention codes in the nation, are used by most U.S. cities, counties, states, and include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wild land fires, and earthquakes. And whereas building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, laborers, and others in the construction industry work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these dedicated members of the International Code Council develop and implement the highest quality codes to protect Americans in the buildings wherein we live, learn, work, worship, and play, and countless lives have been saved due to the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies. And whereas code officials, partners in community safety and economic growth, the theme for Building Safety Month 2017 encourages all Americans to raise awareness of the importance of building safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, water safety and conservation, energy efficiency, and new technologies in the construction industry. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize May 1 through May 31st, 2017 as Building Safety Month in Powhatan County. Accordingly, our citizens are encouraged to consider projects to improve building safety and sustainability at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Mr. Chairman, I present this resolution in the form of a motion.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Brett, thank you. Please share with your department. We appreciate all they do.
Thank you, sir.
We'll now move on to 12C.
Mr. Chairman, in anticipation of 12C, I hereby move that we appoint the county attorney as the acting secretary for the board with respect to the next matter to be considered.
Is that form of motion? We need to take a
motion.
I'll second that.
motion and a second. All in favor of that
Aye.
motion?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Pat, you can stay up there.
Or you can go down, whatever you want to do.
Mr. Chairman, this is a proclamation from the board commending Patricia Weiler, County Administrator of the county from 2013 to 2017. Whereas Pat Weiler has served local governments for 29 years and accepted the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors' unanimous offer to become Powhatan County's County Administrator on February 22, 2013, and whereas Pat has been since 2012 an International County Managers Association credentialed manager and has served on the Virginia Government Finance Officers Association for 8 years, 3 of those as treasurer and 3 as president-elect, president, and past president, and has exhibited high financial professionalism during the several years of difficult budgeting here in our community. And whereas Pat has served the Government Financial Officers Association as a representative on the Committee on Governmental Budgeting, and whereas Pat and her staff were awarded the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for Powhatan for the last 2 years, and oversaw our bond rating improve from A to AA+. And whereas Pat helped guide the Board of Supervisors' creation of a capital maintenance reserve fund to address deferred long-term projects to the tune of $5.6 million of capital improvements. And whereas Pat and her financial staff put in place financial policies and procedures that will guide Powhatan's fiscal planning and accountability for years to come. And whereas the policies have and will continue to enable Powhatan to manage its debt and at the same time allow critical infrastructure improvements, including $50 million in much-needed CIP projects in the last 2 years. And whereas Pat has headed up or initiated multiple efforts to improve Powhatan, including a new Economic Development Authority, Economic Development Plan, Broadband Initiative, paid firefighters and EMT for the first time in our history, long-range planning for water, parks and recreation upgrades, new county websites, completion of the Fighting Creek Walking Trail, among many others. Page 2 of 17. And whereas Pat has made many decisions to create a high-performing organization, among which are hiring high professional department heads, instituted a pay and classification for our county employees, created an economic development department, and many others. And whereas Pat has shown exemplary leadership, modeling high energy and a can-do approach to business, helping the Board of Supervisors craft a 2030 vision and a set of strategic objectives, creating a dynamic, energized team, building a strong relation with the superintendent of schools and our constitutional officers, and whereas Pat has actively communicated, consistently had an open-door policy for citizens and employees alike, listened respectfully, talked straight, never avoided or ducked issues, shown respect to all, and challenged the board to think out of its self-imposed restraints. And whereas the Board of Supervisors is well pleased with Pat's commitment to the quality of life of all county residents, to the office of county administrator, to ethics, and to us, a grateful board. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors this day commends Pat for truly providing leadership that will provide all Powhatan citizens quality programs, services, and facilities needed for years to come, and calls on all of our citizens to join us in wishing Pat a happy retirement with Greg, her children, and her grandchildren. Mr. Chairman, that's in the form of a motion.
I'll second that motion. Do we have any board comments we'd like to add to that? Mr. Norvig?
Absolutely. When I first came on the Board of Supervisors, if you'll recall, it was a special election. It happened in February. Those up here know all too well how busy you are in February, March, April, because that's budget cycle time. So when I first came on board, Pat was extremely helpful. That's an understatement, in helping me to understand all these line items. I have the budget right here for this year. I mean, that's just one of the books we look at. This is the budget for FY18. She helped me navigate through that. Believe it or not, when I got elected, I had no idea how to run a wastewater treatment plant. Just didn't know. And she had books on wastewater treatment, She had books on, I don't know, animal control, you name it. And Pat basically gave me a box, you remember, gave me a box full of folders. And I carried that out to my car, and I wondered, what did I just do? And she helped me navigate through all of that and get me off to a good start. So I'm forever grateful. And Pat, you've done a fine job, and I really appreciate you educating me in my first months of service on this board. And congratulations, and as we say in the Navy, fair winds and following seas. If you need to know what that means, Google it.
I have a couple comments that I'd like to make. Pat came on board in February of 2013. If you think back to February 2013, this county was in a pretty challenging spot, would be a polite word. We're going through a recession, a drastic reduction in our revenues. We still hadn't recovered yet. She inherited a staff of exactly one. She had one department manager left. Some had left on their own accord. Some had left as a result of some downsizing that we had to do to straighten our revenue line out. But she inherited a staff of one, and she never once flinched. I watched her these years roll her sleeves up and deal with the challenges that she's been faced with. I've watched her work long hours. I've called her and tried to run her out of the county administration building on the weekends before. And all of the things that were mentioned earlier were things that she's done not because she wanted praise, but because she knew it was the right thing to do and it would bring this county forward. Biggest thing I think she's done that Jamie Timberlake, who's sitting in the audience, spoke today at her luncheon, and he said that she'd made him a better person. I echo the same thing. She's made me a better person because of what she's done, and for that I say thank you. Pat?
Then so.
Mr.
Go ahead, Mr.
Chairman,
Williams.
Carson, if you will, let me make a quick statement. Pat, I can't imagine how excited you must be after how many years of working and 29 years of public service. Folks, that's special. Anybody that commits that amount of time to public service and accomplishes what Pat has accomplished, it truly is special. And Pat, I was wondering, what are you going to do, you know, going literally from 90 miles an hour going to retirement? I worry, you know, I know you've got a new family member that's looking forward to spending time with you.
I will be just fine, thank you.
Somehow I knew that. I'm sitting there thinking, you know, maybe we ought to be considering thinking about having the fun that you're going to be having. Thank you, Pat, for everything you've done for us.
Thank you again. Let's do a picture.
Okay,
All right?
of the board.
Yep. Stand here. Up there. Come on.
Oh, we'll cover my head.
No.
What are you going on?
Here we go. You can go.
Yeah, you go in the middle. Okay, perfect.
All right, David.
Hey, we come up with spot, right?
Come up, spot.
Do you have the spot?
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Frank.
Congratulations.
Can I say a few words?
You can? You most certainly can.
Thank you, Board. I've had, it's been a great experience being with Powhatan County, so I thank you for that opportunity. And you made it sound like that I did a lot of things, but I didn't do a lot of things on my own. I had all the county staff there, and especially my team of department directors, and I would just like to say thank you to them because I did not do this all on my own. And when my department directors please stand up, because you guys deserve most of this credit that they've given to me, so thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to our first public comment period. If you're here to speak on anything that's on the public hearing tonight, you need to wait then. So the only things on our public hearing are the budget. Excuse me, the budget is not on our public hearing because we held that last week. So if you want to speak on the budget, you can speak now, or anything else that is not on public hearing. So the only thing we have on public hearing right now is a reduction in proffers. So if you're here to speak on anything else, please, you can come forward at this time.
And if anybody wants to say anything about Pat.
And of course, you, by all means, can come up and speak if you want to say anything about our county administrator, positively. Thank you.
We will run you out.
Am I on?
Yep.
Oh. I'm Max Timberlake, 1479 Dorset Road. As president of Powhatan Farm Bureau, I'd like to thank Pat Wheeler for his service to our county. I do have a short story to tell on Pat. When an FFA student asked her to get on her knees. Do you remember that day? I have a picture. I have a picture to prove it. Several years ago, our Extension Office, Monacan Soil and Water, and Farm Bureau were presenting Farm Day at an elementary school. Pat and a couple of staff folks had come out to see what it was all about. One of the exhibits was an imitation dairy cow, where the kids learned how to milk a cow. For the young children, it was not hard to bend over to milk the cow, but when it was Pat's turn, she had to get down on her knees, even in her business attire. That was when I knew for sure that Pat was going to be a friend of the farm for Powhatan. I promise next time we ask you to milk a cow, we'll bring an official milking stool. Again, thank you for your service.
Eric Jones, 2799 Huguenot Springs Road. Pat, I wanted to first congratulate you on your retirement. You will be missed greatly. My service to Powhatan began a few months after yours, and I will be forever thankful and remain thankful that I had the opportunity to work with you. I learned a great deal from you, your quiet professionalism, your courage to stand up for your convictions is something that I admire greatly, and something that I've learned a great deal from. I feel like I'm a better professional now because of working with you, and for that I thank you and wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
I think now is the right time to talk about the budget. If it's not, I'm out of turn, tell me.
No, you're in good shape.
Okay, I never, despite trying to understand it, I never quite do. So I'm Jim Carver. I live at 4245 Staker Creek Drive. First, I have to apologize. My daughter challenged me to grow a playoff beard. So this is for the Capitals if you're a hockey fan. And it's not helping very much. So I just wanted to speak tonight. I spoke last session. I'm an advocate for the 88.5 cent tax rate and the budget that aligns with that objective. But I wanted to share a few more details. Last week I just spoke briefly. That option, I think it's option B, if I read the agenda correctly, is not anti-school. It is not anti-school. I moved to this county for my kids to go K through 12 and have the same bus driver for 9 years, and that's why I'm here, and I support the schools, absolutely. The Board of Supervisors is providing the school board exactly what they asked for. I also wanted to take the chance to thank Dr. Jones and his staff again. I try to do it every chance I get, but they've done a tremendous job of really, it's very noticeable, the improvement, the relationship with the Board of Supervisors and the county staff. So that's awesome. Option B is not anti-investment. It is not anti-capital improvement. It just recognizes that you can't do everything at once, and you prioritized. I'm not an advocate. Some people think I'm a zealot. I'm not an advocate just because I want to lower taxes. It's because I believe in balancing needs with reasonable taxes and a needs-based budgeting approach in everything you do. I appreciate all the amicable discussions I've had with plenty of people that have not agreed with me, but it's always been amicable, and I've appreciated those great conversations. Again, I believe option B is the best balanced approach, and I want to thank the board for their willingness to make some tough decisions and all the time you've invested that led us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carver.
Good evening, Joe Walters, 4520 Maddox Crossing Court. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ms. Weiler, I had hoped to attend your event this afternoon. I'm sorry that I could not, but I wanted to take a moment just to thank you for your service. As a private citizen, you have always answered any question that I have asked in the most respectful way, and I truly appreciate your sincerity, the time that you've offered so freely, and also the cooperation that you've demonstrated. After being elected to the school board last year, I then asked you different sorts of questions in our meetings and various things, and you were always so kind to answer them with information that I could understand as a new school board member. The questions from the public, I appreciate you answering them in that manner, and the spirit that you've demonstrated. I truly appreciate the cooperation between this board and the school board over the 2 years that I have served on the school board has truly been very, very impressive. Thank you for what you do, and I sincerely wish you all the best in the future. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. Russell Wilson, 3906 Three Bridge Road. Pat, I started working for the schools out here in 1992. And during that time period, there's been a lot of boards out here. School board, board of supervisors. And since your tenure, there's never been the cooperation between the two boards that I've seen over the last 5 or 6 years that you've been the county administrator. And I think that speaks for both boards, but I think it also speaks volumes about the leadership of the boards. You and both Dr. Jones have created that atmosphere that there's been positive discussions and not posturing between boards. And also think of you as a friend, and I hate to see you leave, but I can fully understand it, and I wish you well in your retirement.
Good evening. I'm Lummy Jones, 2729 Jeets Ferry Road. And first of all, I'd like to say how grateful I am for Pat being here. I've learned a lot through Pat because she was always one I could call, and if I had a question, she was patient with me and tried to answer, and I can get a little bit impatient sometimes, but I appreciate everything you've done for the county. You have a love of this county for someone who's only been here 4 years that I just think is wonderful. You volunteer, you're involved in things, and I know that will continue, and I'm so glad you're not going anywhere. So thank you again, Pat, for all your service. And in addition to that, I have to say my piece about the tax rate. I know we're talking about a budget that is cutting the rate by 1.5 cents. To me, that just seems pretty ludicrous. Why would we take less than probably $50 a year out of most homeowners' pockets just to cut the tax rate when that 50 as a group for everybody in this county could do so much for somebody who needs it? And why wouldn't we just take it and put it in savings? Just because we have it doesn't mean we have to spend it. And that's when we tend to, in our businesses, is when we are able to save, is when we have the ability to have that extra money. And so I encourage you not to cut the tax rate. I encourage you to keep it at what it currently is. Believe me, I don't think most of the people in this room are going to miss anywhere from $20 to $100 a year. And I think it would do the people who aren't in this room that need help a lot more for the county to be able to help them with. So even though I believe in budgeting, I also believe in saving. So I would encourage you, take the money and put it in savings. There will be a day when we need it again. Thank you. And again, Pat, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, Laura, for reminding people to sign.
Good evening, Faye Barton, 3575 Huguenot Trail, Powhatan. I'm your county treasurer, and tonight I want to speak of Ms. Weiler's retirement and wish her much happiness as she leaves this position of county administrator. It's been with great pleasure to have worked with Ms. Weiler for the last 4 years. I've seen several county administrators come and go in my 25 years of service to this county, 5 to be exact, and one of those was an acting county administrator, but they all had different personalities. Ms. Wilder has handled herself in a very professional way, but was able to communicate with all types of people. Her door was open as well as her opinion. She was a great listener and focused on individual needs as they spoke, not just telling you what will take place. Her decisions were always based on what was best for this county. She was fair, and she worked to see that the employees of this county were compensated for their work and placed in the positions that best suited their qualifications, including the constitutional offices. She came to this county after many changes had just taken place and was facing a poor morale of employees. It takes a lot to bring the spirit of employees up, but she proved to them their happiness on the job is the most important to her. Without happy employees, you will not get the dedication needed to best serve the public citizens. I believe she has earned much respect in serving as our leader, and she will be greatly missed. I want to personally thank her for her hard work, many late hours, determination, and the stamina to get the job done. She leaves her position with much success and all her accomplishments and makes the transition a much smoother one for her successor. I wish her much happiness in this chapter of her life and thank her from the bottom of my heart for all she has done for Powhatan County. Thank you, Pat.
Good evening, Brad Nunley, Sheriff. Pat, I got to speak today a little bit at our gathering this afternoon, so it'll be short and sweet. But it's been a pleasure to work with you. Our office has been proud to work with you, and we want to wish you much success and in your future endeavors. The offer is still out there.
He offered her a job today.
Yeah, if y'all don't know, I've been trying to get Pat to come work for the sheriff's office. So I don't have it in the budget to pay you right yet.
But you got the right person to figure out how to figure it
out. Yeah, if we stay at 90 cents, maybe I can get you in the budget now. But it has been a pleasure, and I will repeat what I said earlier today. We have a standard in our office that no matter what we do, if we leave it better than how we found it, we figure we did well, and you did well. So thank you. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Boatwright from 3511 Trenham Road. I couldn't make your party today, and so I couldn't let this opportunity pass tonight to tell you just how grateful I am for all the help you've given me with the War Memorial Building. That has been a dream of ours to replace and restructure that building and get it back to where it once used to be. And Pat, you have done so much to help us and to guide us. And I, like others, have said, I've never called you, but what you didn't willingly say, what do you need? I'll help you with whatever it is. And so I just thank you, and I'm so glad you're staying in Powhatan because I might invite you to be on the board. That's a free job. And I do want to say, according to the tax rate that you were doing, taxes are a funny kind of thing, and we can't do with them and we can't do without them. And there are lots of different ways that we look at it, but the way that I look at taxes is if you're just going to cut it a little bit, I don't know how much it's going to help the average person. And sometimes if we don't have taxes, we don't get what we want in this county. And I, for one, want some tax money to help us with the War Memorial Building. And whereas maybe you all would not want to give me a donation, maybe if you had to pay the taxes and the board had to deal it out to me, then I could get something for that War Memorial Building. So, you know, it's when we all put our money together and we have somebody to to look at what we need, and there are so many needs out there other than schools and sheriff departments. Not that they don't, because I think that's a wonderful opportunity that we have to provide for them. But there are other things in our county that we need as well. And I think that the performing arts and the things that we offer our children and the things that we can offer through the War Memorial Building are some things that we would like to have money for. And so we haven't asked the board, but if we did, now you're going to say, well, we've lowered the taxes, so you can't afford to give it to me. So just think about that before you go doing that, because, you know, there are a lot of things out here that we've got to pay with taxes. That's all we've got to pay for them with. And, you know, this is the thing that I think about. Politics sometimes says to us, well, we better do this if we want to get elected next year. Well, you know, people don't give a rip about that. We're just out here every day making a living however we can, and the average person doesn't care that our taxes have been cut this little amount. So I just want to urge you all to think about where this money is going to go that you're trying to save us. And I really want to go back to my thanks for you, Pat. And I will say that probably the toughest job you've had is to put up with 5 men. They have said, well, I know it hadn't been hard for you to put up with Angie because she's a lovely person. But, you know, they say behind every good man there's a good woman, and you have been that good woman. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much, Board. And I'll be back one day asking for some money.
Thank you, Ms. Boatwright.
Hi, my name is Dave Bailey, 4261 Worship Road. I suspect you've already made up your mind, and there's a lot of fairly respectable, prominent people telling us we don't need to lower the tax rate. The primary reason you should try your best to lower the tax rate, and that's also based on what I've said previously, you guys are the most qualified to figure out where to cut. But I'm telling you, I've talked to a lot of people in the county, and there's a tremendously large amount of people in the county that struggle with the current tax rate, and they could certainly make good use of $20 to $100 a year. If you're a multimillionaire, you don't worry about it, okay? I don't personally worry about it, but I've talked to the people. If you want to help poor people, try to lower the tax rate.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Apologize for the audio problem.
Did the cover fall off that microphone?
Cover came off.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy.
Good evening. Mary Smith, 2573 Ridge Road. I just want to thank the board for fully funding our schools, and also Mrs. Weiler, thank you for being a big supportive of the schools and for your service here in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Randy Buzzard, 3846 Millmount Drive, Powhatan. I'm the IT director for the county, and I want to wish Pat a happy retirement and just thank her from the bottom of my heart for hiring a 27-year-old country boy from West Virginia 17 years ago when I first met you. And you've made me a better professional, you've been a good mentor to me, and you've made me a better person. So, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Okay, I will close the first public comment period. We'll now move on to item 9, appointments to boards, commissions, committees. We have one appointment to our Powhatan County Audit Committee. Thank you for those of you who came and are leaving. The appointment tonight is for our audit committee. The current audit committee is consisting of 2 Board of Supervisors and 2 school board members. The 2 Board of Supervisors members are Ms. Angie Cabell and Mr. Larry Norvig. 2 school board representatives are Mr. Rick Cole and Ms. Kim Emel. And I'm proud to say that we're going to appoint an at-large citizen, and that at-large citizen is Mr. Jim Carver, 4245 Steger Creek Drive, Powhatan, Virginia, Jim has attended every Board of Supervisor workshop on our budget and brings a tremendous amount of knowledge, and we'll look forward to adding him to the Audit Committee. I don't need to make a motion, because basically it's Chairman's decision, so. Unless, anybody got any comments?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Jim's back there. I don't mind saying Jim has modeled, in my opinion, he's modeled the way to approach elected officials and bureaucrats and fellow citizens and everybody involved. Money is kind of the touchstone issue that can be very volatile at times. And I think Jim Carver has shown the way that even when you disagree, you remain respectful. He's got good ideas, and I'm really looking forward to working with him on the Audit Committee, because I know he'll bring a side to it that maybe other people aren't seeing, and he always challenges me, and I think that's very valuable and it's needed in government. So thanks, Jim, for stepping up.
Thank you, Mr. Norvig.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I reiterate what Mr. Nordvig said, but what I like particularly about Mr. Carver is that we don't see the world alike at all, particularly from a financial point of view. We're not as far apart that I think that sometimes we think we are, but as Mr. Nordvig said, what's important is the way that Mr. Carver goes about presenting his disagreement with some of the decisions that I may have made or some of the positions that I may have made. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. I think Mr. Nordvig is absolutely right. It's the kind of civic engagement that we need. People who disagree would disagree with respect. Thank you, Mr. Carver, for your past performance.
Okay. We'll now move
I'm
on.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. You do need a vote.
Oh, we do need a vote?
Yeah, what the bylaws say is it's appointed by the chairman with the consent of the board. It's sort of like a Supreme Court justice. You still
Need a
got to
second?
So,
Does it need a
don't need a
second?
second, just a vote of
vote.
consent to the appointment.
All in favor of Jim Carver on the Audit Committee?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Tom, for straightening us out. We'll now move on to item 10A, the resolution R 2017-27 fixing the FY 2018 real estate tax rate, found on page 79 of your packet.
Are you ready for a motion?
You can make a motion, we can.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Proposal B, fulfilling the promise we made last year to try to reduce the tax rate, and that tax rate would be 88.5 cents.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion?
I'd like to make a couple just real quick, Mr. Chairman. I think probably I'm speaking for the board. I don't want to assume, but we hear you, the people who are in favor of keeping taxes and even some who are in favor of raising them, we hear you. The most common argument I've heard on that side of the house has been we need this tax money for services and projects. I would just remind people that are in that camp that last year we did approve quite a lot. We have a new school being built, we have a new water tower being built, new 911 communication system, we have broadband coming in, we're bumping out the back of the courthouse for a 911 center, Sallyport combination.
Bus garage.
Bus transportation garage, the old bus garage is now a joint transportation garage. There are many other things. We've put a lot of money into the fire rescue department in the last year or two. So I think you can kind of safely assume that this board does think that capital projects are important, that needed facilities are important, and they do attract future residents and future business. On the other side of the house, and in my district, in my experience, there are more of them that would like to see the taxes a bit lower. They understand the other argument that I just voiced, but there are people who live in my district where $40 is a lot of money. There's people who, that's their weekly grocery bill right there. So I think one of the citizens commented that if you're fairly well off, maybe it doesn't matter so much to you, but there are people who it matters quite a lot. And not only that, but even the middle-class people, that maybe $40 doesn't hurt them right now, but there's something in the military we call mission creep, where, you know, this year it goes up $40, next year it goes up $50, a couple years later it goes up $70, and before you know it, your taxes are $400 or $500 higher than when you first moved here, let's say 10 years before. So those are also good reasons. There's something, the word I'm gonna leave you with is balance. There's a balance, and this board has tried very hard to find that balance between needed services and also a few extra services that make Powhatan County attractive, but also not putting the entire burden on the backs of the residents. I really like the idea of reining in residential real estate taxes because that gives this board more incentive to go out and get that commercial tax that we are lacking in Powhatan County. We need to get on our bicycles and pedal hard. We have the EDA up and running now. That's a great thing. We've got a consultant working on that. That's a good thing also. We need the commercial side to start picking up the slack out here in Powhatan so our taxes don't go to the moon. So I think that's another good reason to rein in taxes a bit so it puts pressure on us to get the commercial side going. And I'm not sure we'd do that without some impetus. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I intend on voting for lower taxes tonight.
Any other comments from the board members?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I agree with many of the things that Larry said. What people don't realize that even though it is a small amount of reduction this year, as Mr. Tucker said, we were committed last year to begin incrementally walking it back. Now, we're not going to get it to where we want it one time up here on stage, one budget. It's going to take time. And if we can commit like we did last year to incrementally keep going in the direction that we want to go, we'll get there. But you have to have the commitment to do it. Now, this budget that we're talking about, the 88.5-cent budget, it's a budget that has something in there for everyone. And if you go down to the General Assembly, everybody doesn't get everything every year that they want. It just doesn't happen. In this budget, we looked at what are the priorities, and the priorities are always public safety, schools, et cetera. And then we looked at the stakeholders in this county, the homeowners, and just as importantly, business owners, both the business owners that are here today and the ones that we hope that will come in the future. So all this went into our thinking with the budget and the tax rate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have a few comments. I am fundamentally opposed to lowering the tax rate, so.
Angie, pull it down even further.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I am fundamentally opposed to lowering the tax rate. We speak in our Vision 2030 about a desirable quality of life, an outstanding education system, and excellent public safety, just to name a few things. I feel like we should hold steady on our tax rate because I take a long-term view of our financials. All done?
Mr. Chairman, are you finished?
Sure, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Did you want to finish?
No,
Finish.
I'm fine. Right, that's okay. I'll vote, it's all right.
That's fine, please. Go
Really?
ahead, Mr. Tucker.
Last year in this very room, we committed to unprecedented expenditures of taxpayers' money. I don't think any one of us begrudged that funding. We committed to rebuild the junior high, to the bus garage, which has been on the books for 25 years, to a water tower, to broadband, to 911 center, CAB, to an economic development study, to a capital reserve maintenance fund, to a pay and classification study and salary adjustments as a result of that, to the courthouse expansion, to a revamped fire and EMS, and other things. No small commitment for a board, particularly a board coming out of real difficult economic times. No one up here was embarrassed by those commitments. We weighed in our due diligence, listened to department heads, the constitutional officers, the county administrator, and were true in my judgment to our vision and our strategic objectives. We debated, we cut, we considered immediate needs and long-range implications. We were consciously aware of Mr. Williams's wise dictum to always, as eager as we are to bite the bullet and stop kicking the critical infrastructure enhancements down the road, to always balance our needs with our ability to pay. We are not embarrassed and do not regret making those financial commitments to the future quality of life of this community. I also recall that most of us, while voting for last year's 90-cent rate, we promised to do everything in our power to reduce the levy this year. Proposal B is a resolution fulfilling that promise, setting the tax rate at 88.5 cents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Angie, I would ask, first of all, I want to apologize if you felt like that you were not respected and cut off. Please, I'd like you to finish your comments if you can. So the rest, because I think the public deserves to hear that and the rest of the board deserves to hear your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Melton, but I'll respectfully decline at this time.
Okay.
I have a question then, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Pardon?
I have a question then for Ms. Cabell.
Yes.
Okay, Angie, the reason I was kind of checking with David, so I guess we're headed for about a 4-1 vote. I haven't heard from the chairman yet. I just have a question. On the sheet we went through at the workshop a couple weeks ago, the one with all the line items on it, this was the one that Chairman Melton and Ms. Weiler and David had input to. There are about 35 line items that we all voted 5-0 to cut in order to get down to 88.5. So I'm just a little surprised. I didn't know until today that you were not in favor of 88.5. So I guess that's what this was all about, was I guess we're going 4-1, and that was just a little surprising. You don't have to explain your vote, but I'm just curious as to why.
Those were hypotheticals.
Yep. I know it was straw poll. I know that.
So I'm sorry I didn't consult with you. I mean, what do you want me to say? They were hypotheticals. It was an option. If we were going to go with an 88.5-cent budget, would I agree to those things?
It seemed to me that we were reaching agreement.
And it
so I
wasn't
guess
all
we had
4-1. There was
misunderstanding.
one about the firefighters that I specifically voted against.
Right.
So
But there were only a
if-
few that we did 4-1.
So,
Okay, Mr. Nordvig.
so let me interject here. So, I think Ms. Cabell has been very consistent. She has shared with me as a chairman that she would not support an 88.5, that she felt like it was not visionary. She participated in that exercise as we were participating in that. That was something that I had worked on after listening to the board over the last 6 workshops on a way to achieve an 88.5-cent tax rate with the least amount of disturbance as possible. So I do think Angie has been consistent to me as the chairman that she would not support an 88.5, that she's been consistently at 90. So maybe you were confused. However, I think she was saying that she would allow those things to take place if she could decided to go to 88.5. I don't think we were saying that we were all 100% there. I did bring that plan forward, and after much work with Pat and staff and a lot of hard work on my end to decide where I felt like the tax rate needed to be this year. I do agree with many people who spoke tonight that an 88.5 could set us up to not be very visionary. I also agree with people who say that people deserve an opportunity to have some relief. I also agree that we did bite off a large chunk of capital improvement projects last year. I would not have brought that plan forward at 88.5 unless I truly believed it was the best thing for the county. I ran on balancing our revenue line off of economic development and pulling the burden off of the homeowner. We've done a poor job of that as a board. We've got to do a much better job. We supplement our tax rate 7 cents because of water and sewer, because we don't have enough hookups. We need to fix that. We still have 92% of our revenue come from the homeowners to provide services through this county. That's wrong. We need to get better at that. We need to be business friendly, not say we want to be business friendly. I presented last week a slide that shows the tax rate in 2012 at 77 cents. The board raised it in 2013 to 90 cents because of the loss in revenue off of their 92% of our revenue being homeowners. That was 1 cent less than we could have made it. It had been a revenue neutral tax rate. 2014, the board held it at 90 cents. It was a tax rate at that time that was still 1 penny below where it could have been. We reassessed in 2015. We still lost value on our homes, 92% of revenue. We kept the same tax rate, 2.5 pennies. We could have raised it and been revenue neutral. 2016, the board kept the same tax rate at 90 cents. We did no reassessment. In 2017, this board did, in a 3-2 vote, myself, Mr. Tucker, and Ms. Cabell, passed a budget that was a 5-cent net tax increase to do $50 million worth of projects that had been deferred, kicked down the road for many years. It was a big undertaking, and you can see much of that taking place now. This year, so if you take those 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17, basically a 1.5 cent tax increase, effective tax increase over those years. If we lower the tax rate this year to 88.5, you have a net effective 0 tax rate. Now, that doesn't mean your house may not have gone up, but the book, which Jamie reminds us quite frequently of, the book will be basically a net 0. We spoke tonight. Any extra revenues that had been created over our 15% fund balance, and we talked tonight about $5.6 million of projects that had been fixed. Many of them kicked down the road for many years. The library needed painting. It didn't get painted, so the siding rotted. We had to replace siding and paint it. The facade on the social service building was falling off of the building. So Pat has done a great job of taking the extra revenues over our 15% fund balance and getting us to address CIP projects. We still have many needs. We do. We have a $1.2 million shortfall on a radio system we're going to have to figure out where to fund. So this is a long-term project that we're working on. I ran and said that this was, I said it, Mr. Bailey was sitting in the room, and Mr. Silverbauer was sitting in the room, Mr. Carver was in the room, many of you may have been there. I said this is not a sprint, but a journey. 1.5 is a good start. We need to reduce the supplemental water and sewer, that's 7 cents, and we need to continue to grow our commercial quarter so that it creates the revenues we need. This did fund $749,000 more to our schools than we gave them last year. That came as a result of new construction increase over what we forecasted, personal property tax increase basically because people were buying new cars, newer vehicles, and sales tax increased revenues. So it's important that we remember where those increased revenues. We funded a full-time position in our Commonwealth Attorney's Office. We funded an increase for deputies when they finish the academy to bring them closer to where they need to be paid. We funded some other projects too. So isn't that by cutting 1.5 pennies we're not doing anything. So I am in support of the 1.5 penny reduction at 88, which is version B, for those reasons.
Call the question.
Call the vote.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye. And this is on option B, correct?
Correct. Version B, the
Okay.
one Mr. Tucker's.
Mr.
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
No.
Mr. Melton?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
4-1.
Excuse me, I apologize, 4-1. Thank you for everyone for your comments. We'll now move on to item 10B, resolution adopting operating budget for FY beginning July 1st, 2017, ending June 30th, 2018, and appropriating the funds.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve R 2017-28 as presented.
You need to say whether you're A or B.
Version B.
And you want version B.
It's still B, yes.
Yes, okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments on that?
I have one, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. The header, this is on page 83, and maybe I'm reading this wrong. I just sort of noticed, I know we put out an amended agenda, and I'm not sure if this was on the amended agenda or not, but page 83, if you read the agenda item title for Resolution 2017-28, it says adopting the operating budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018, fiscal year 2018, and appropriating the funds.
The
So-
appropriating has just been repeated. It's only in the agenda title.
Okay.
And if you'll notice, it's only an agenda title. It's only stated incorrectly on the agenda statement, which is not what you're voting on.
Right.
You're voting on page 84. Actually, you're voting on
Page 88.
88.
Right, the resolution
And
itself.
if you look at the title of the resolution, it is correct. There is just a typo on page 83, which is the agenda statement. It's just a summary of what you're looking at.
Okay.
You're actually voting on the resolution found on page 88.
Thank you.
And the resolution reads Powhatan County Resolution R 2017-28B, adopting the operating budget for FY fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017, and ending June 30th, 2018, and appropriating the funds. And it shows it's $52,376,653.
Call for the question.
Mr. Nordvig?
I have one more
Yes.
question. Since this is the total amount of money, we're going to be talking about a staffing resolution. Is that 2 more to go?
Yes, we do have staffing resolution.
Okay, because my question is, how many firefighter positions we're paying for? Because that's going to affect the totals in here.
The resolution that you're passing for staffing matches all the funds that are available in Resolution 2017-28A and B. The only difference between A and B is that $488,000 we're going to go to the capital projects to partially fund the $1.2 million needed in the radio system.
Okay,
And so there is no difference between A and B as far as funding for firefighters.
I guess my,
And they both match the staffing plan that you're going to be adopting.
right, and that's why I'm asking now, because we haven't done the staffing plan yet. I saw the number 10 on there. I thought the number was 8 for the firefighters.
The only thing that we changed for firefighters is that if we, the same thing that we did for the sheriff's office with his part-time deputies, if you have part-time staff, if you increase the number that you're hiring, but you don't change the FTE, the dollar amount stays the same. It allows the departments that have part-timers to have more flexibility. So you would have 2 people that together work 20 hours a week, or
Right.
you could have 1 person working 20 hours a week. So we did increase the staffing just of the number of personnel, both in the communications center, 911 dispatch, and in the fire department. No increase in funding.
Okay, so this had nothing to do with the lieutenant positions that were asked for?
No,
that-
there was, you'll see
Okay.
there are, if you look in the staffing plan, there are no
Okay, I did.
lieutenants in there.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it, I'm
We-
ready.
We pulled those 2 positions, requested positions out as part of the reduction to get to 488.
Right, I remember.
And I think on the 29th, we did get the updates on the 2 additional, from the 8 to the 10, and we also got the request from the, Mr. Nolan about the additional people needed for
Correct.
his operation and dispatch. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I throw a wrench into this whole discussion? Is that all
Yes.
right? On the appropriation side, as the board may recall, we've had a conversation about potentially on one specific county department, not appropriating them on an annual basis, appropriating them on a monthly basis. And so I guess it'd be a question, and Ms. Weiler, I guess we would unappropriate, or can we defer the appropriation portion? I mean, it doesn't have to be.
I would recommend that at the time they make a decision, if they decide to go that way, that they then unappropriate just that one department. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that works. I
Okay,
just wanted to kind of put it up on everybody's radar.
And it is possible to do an unappropriation,
It
so they
is. I
could
just
do
wanted to
that
kinda
if they
make sure
decide to
everybody-
do that with that department.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Latchney, for bringing that up. So we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
No.
Mr. Melton?
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. We'll now move on to 10C, Resolution 2017-29, implementing the changes to the Personnel Property Tax Relief Act of 1998, specific relief for 2017, found on page 93 of your packet.
The board adopts this every year. It it's a calculation that is done based on the amount of personal property tax relief that we receive every year from the state legislators. That amount has not increased, and therefore, the same amount of money needs to be spread over all of our personal property tax holders, which means that the percent of the relief in Powhatan goes down every year, and this is just adopting that percent of release for personal property.
Any questions of staff? If not, I'll make a motion we approve Resolution R 2017-29 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We now move on to item 10D, Resolution 2017-31, adopting the Powhatan County Employee Handbook dated April 24th, 2017, with an effective date of April 24th, 2017, found on page 95 of your packet.
Ms. Jones is going to present this item, and she will just point out those pages that we have made changes to,
Okay.
or recommending that you make changes to.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. As Ms. Weiler said, we have some minor changes in the employee handbook. You have redlined copies in your packet. These really are just there are no major or minor policy changes. These are really just verbiage. We're updating for these verbiage changes and clarification of some items. On page 5 of the employee manual, there are some clarifications and additions to the employee standard of conduct.
Page 101 in your agenda.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I read the page number from the manual, not the agenda.
Right.
On page 102, under the probationary period, we are adding a sentence about employees remaining on a probationary period until a written evaluation is conducted by the employee supervisor. It's not an automatic 6 months and you're off. On page 103, in the employee manual red line, we have just added market adjustments to cost of living adjustments, again, just verbiage. Same page, section 1.4, there is an item at the end of the performance appraisals.
Page 112.
Page 112, under the employee health insurance opt-out plan, we've added the verbiage, if we have the money to approve that benefit in the annual operating budget. And I believe the only other change is a little bit further on. Pat, do you have it off the top of your head?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm
No,
scrolling
that's
through the
fine.
pages just like you are
It's
looking for.
132.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Under the disciplinary process, we have just, again, streamlined and clarified some items here that might be misconstrued as employees read through this. Also on page 133, under the written reprimand, oral reprimand, written reprimand, and conditional status. I know some of these, and that's it. We didn't change anything in the grievance process. Some of these changes are minor, but again, it's just for clarification.
Any questions of staff? Linda, I'll read through them, and, they made good sense to me on while we're cleaning it up. I like the additional language for the rude behavior to a fellow employee or a customer or a staff member. So, any other questions of staff? If not, I'll move that we approve Resolution R 2017-31, adopting a Powhatan County Employee Handbook.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
I think motion passes 5-0. Now we move on to 10E, Resolution R 2017-32, adopting the FY 2018 staffing plan, found on page 149 of your packet.
We
actu-
have, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have revised just today, because as we were just discussing a few moments ago, we did inadvertently, I did inadvertently, leave out the changes in the firefighters where we wanted the flexibility, so we moved the part-time from 8 to 10, and in the communications specialist. Those are what we added. They were already in your budget, and they were already approved, but that just got added to the staffing plan. I have extra copies if anyone needs them.
The copies are on the dais, and again, we want to point out that under the firefighter EMTs on page 152, you'll notice, as Mr. Norgvid said, that those are 10, but there's still 4 FTE, and we proposed 11, and the fire chief asked if we could please increase. We put 10 on page 152. The fire chief asked if we could please make that 11. It's still 4 FTE. The dollar amounts don't change. It allows more flexibility. There are some part-time firefighters who do not wish to work half-time. They wish to work less than half-time, and that's what this is accommodating. And as Linda pointed out, the other change in the revised is on in page 155 in the agenda, which is page 5 of 5, and we inadvertently left off that you did approve 2 communication shift supervisors, reducing the amount of communication specialists from 11 to 9, so 2 of the existing communication specialists would become shift supervisors. And again, the communications part-time staff, there were 4 people that were working half-time. We proposed 8, and the Director of Public Safety Communications, we proposed 7, asked if we could make that 8, but again, it's 8 people still working the same amount of
Still 2
full-time equivalencies.
Still
So,
2.3
yes.
FTEs.
So if you'll notice, it's still 1 increase in FTEs from the adopted 17 budget to the adopted 18 budget.
Any questions of staff on the staffing plan? For those of you in the audience, this was something that our county administrator encouraged us to do several years back. And what this did was, it was a staffing plan that helped us, as a Board of Supervisors, understand. She even took it down to where you, with your part-time people, you were tracking those so that you couldn't hire a bunch of part-time people and really not just track your FTE. She converts them to full-time. So it was a wonderful plan that Pat brought forward to us. I'm in support. So are we supporting the plan as it sees here, or are we the amended plan?
We're asking you to vote on the amended
Amended plan,
plan,
so-
if you would. It says revised
okay.
424.
424,
Okay,
yes.
All right. So I'll make a resolution that we approve the amended staffing plan 2017-32 as of 4/20, with the 424 amendments.
Second.
Have a motion in a second?
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We'll now get a, thank you, Linda, for your time.
Do you want to do your public hearings now?
Ooh, I apologize. I should have done this a little while ago. We'll actually do our first public hearing. We should have started that at 7 o'clock. And Pat reminded me, what am I going to do when she retires?
You'll do just fine.
We'll now have a public hearing on, let me find my place here. I lost my place.
It's on page 201.
Okay, 201 of your packet, I think this is, here it is. Ordinance 2017-12, amending the proffered conditions originally approved by the Board of Supervisors on case 0519 RAZ, reducing the amount of cash proffers contained in proffered condition number 3, and amending the zoning district map accordingly. Ms. Brett, you going to take this?
Yes. Good evening, board members. Brett Chardon, Director of Community Development. As you summarized, this is a request to amend the cash proffer related to 2 parcels in Mill Station, parcel 38F-1-54 and 38F-2-8. That would reduce the cash proffer from $7,236 to $1,880. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and 4-to-1 vote recommended disapproval of this. That is it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of staff at this time? Seeing none, you can stay by if we do. At this time, we'll have a public hearing on ordinance 2017-12, amending the proffer conditions on case 0519. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on this. I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2017-12 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Mr. Williams?
No.
Mr. Nordvig?
No.
Mrs. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2. We'll now go back, since that's the only public hearing, we'll now go back to item, excuse me,
10G.
10G, status report on a strategic action plan found on page 157 of our packets.
I'm only going to cover those items that changed since the report that we gave on March 27th, and those items are highlighted in yellow. And the first one is your first item, LD2, update the comprehensive plan. Based on the report that Mr. Chardon gave us on the status of the comp plan, we have moved all of those target dates out 3 months. So rather than the number 10, the board adopting a comprehensive plan on June 26th, we now have a board adoption of the comprehensive plan on September 25th, all based on, rather than receiving the comprehensive plan from the Planning Commission on March 7th, or the Planning Commission taking action on March 7th, they are planning to take action on June 7th.
Any questions of staff? So, can I ask Mr. Sheridan a question?
Oh, of course, yes.
So Brett, I know the Planning Commission had a workshop just recently, and they're planning another workshop here in May, I think. Is that correct?
We're having a workshop in 2 days on Thursday, and then another planned for May 2nd after their regular meeting.
So pretty confident that they're going to finish it and have it in front of us in June 7th?
We're certainly pushing for that.
Okay. Please let us know. Maybe all of us should encourage our Planning Commission members to really try to get it to us in front of us, as you know, this has been going on for a little while. So please, if you can reach out to your Planning Commission member, encourage them to try to meet the deadline that Brett has brought forward. I appreciate that. Thank you.
The next item that changes on page 158, and it is for the same thing, it's related to the comp plan date. On page 159 on EC4, which is to streamline the building inspection, Mr. Chardon is spending more time on the comp plan than what we anticipated, and therefore we have put off he is still reviewing policies and procedures and forms, but is not yet ready to implement those for streamlining the building inspection, planning, and zoning process. And as you know, he also did a reorganization, and he's also waiting for new staff to come up to speed and for new staff to begin working, another hire. So those dates have been moved out.
So a couple comments here. First of all, Brett, thank you for the rework of your department. I've heard that some people who have been involved are very, very pleased with the additional support, especially from the site plan review process. I did get a phone call, and I talked to Mr. Shelton briefly about it today, from a builder who I thought had a pretty good idea, and Mr. Shelton will probably be talking, if he hasn't already talked to you about it, and that was allowing for them to apply for their permits at the same time that the health department's reviewing them. Thus, they won't sit in the health department and take 3 months and then have to get in front of the building department and sit for another 3 months. So this will speed the process up. So I know Ralph was, if he hasn't talked to you, he's going to talk to you about that. You still have to have your permits once it goes forward, but we can be dual approval process. So any comments or thoughts there?
That's correct. We've been discussing that in the department. That's something we will implement that, allows some concurrent review rather than waiting for one review to even begin the other. It makes logical sense. It works well.
And I don't think you need our approval for that, so just, please,
Yeah.
Worst thing we can do is get involved in it, so you handle that on your own.
Yeah, so we've, as we see opportunities for efficiencies and things, there's some other things we've changed. We certainly put those in place, but then overall, so I don't want there to be the impression that we're waiting, not doing anything. As we see opportunities, we do implement them, but a kind of overall comprehensive review of everything and rolling out, completely new forms, things like that. No, that has been pushed back a little bit, but again, if we see something that'll help make the department more efficient or be more responsive to citizens, improve review times, we're doing those things as they come.
Perfect. I've already heard good things, so thank you.
The next item is on page 160, and it is finalizing the Cobb's Creek Reservoir, and we will be updating the board on that this evening in closed session. It's under negotiations. Under page 161, the Transportation Master Plan, it will be coming forward at the May meeting. Is it still coming forward at the May meeting on the 2 Route 60 plans? Yeah, okay. That was a nod that Mr. Sherdine said yes. The
Mr.
next.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Brett, this is for you. It says we're going to be adopting the Route 60 East and West studies. I thought these were going to be part of the consideration of the comp plan update by the Planning Commission with recommendations coming to us.
The recommendations of the study and kind of the methodologies they used, those are already being incorporated into the plans and kind of influencing the way the Planning Commission's thinking on some of their areas. So that work is being done. Actually formally adopting the plans or accepting them, acknowledging them, that would be a separate action of the board. You don't have to necessarily. We can just
I guess what I'm getting to, Brett, is if we adopt them, what does that mean? I mean, I thought we had already accepted the plans when they were presented at the joint meeting with the Planning Commission, when Timmons and Barbara Jaycox from the Planning Commission did the presentations. What is it that we would be doing if we adopt it? I don't want to give people the impression that we're adopting this as an appendage to the comprehensive plan, when obviously these studies were studies for our consideration for updating the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, so what you saw and the Planning Commission saw, that was the draft plan based on feedback from the public as well as VDOT. They've incorporated that now into a final plan. Not a whole lot of change, but again, before you saw a draft, now we have a final version. What the board does with it, that's up to you. You don't have to adopt it, but we just wanted somehow to get the final version into the public documents, into the public view, so they'd be aware. But we can discuss how to best do that. Again, it doesn't have to be before the board, but.
So I think we keep the May 17th deadline, and you see the recommendations, the upgrade. We all went through that whole presentation that evening, and it was a ton of detail there and a lot of great detail. So we'll keep this on there, and if we're not ready to make any action on it, this board will let you know. So, thank you.
We can certainly, the agenda sheet, cover memo, we can make it clear that this isn't, allocating any funding. These aren't necessarily, allocating specific projects. Again, it's just kind of having a plan in the works that we may or may not refer to on a project-by-project basis. So.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't want to, have any resulting confusion over what's the comprehensive plan, what's in the comprehensive plan, and a study that's off to the side that we adopted. They may not end up in being, in unity.
Sure.
Or being in the same form. So that was my reason for bringing it up.
All right. Thank you, Brett.
There's only one other item that changed from your last meeting, and that is ED3, which is continue the joint meetings with the school board. Item number 1 states that we will schedule those meetings out for calendar year 17, 18, and 19, and we had only scheduled those meetings out through June 30th, and so this will be left for my predecessor to work with the superintendent and the chairman of the board and the chairman of the school board to get those meetings scheduled out. So with that, those are all the changes to the
Okay.
strategic plan.
Any questions or comments on the strategic action plan? Thank you for the updates, Pat. We'll now move on to 10H, which is status of bond projects. We did get a handout on these. It is also found on page 169 of your packets.
So
Ramona?
So the handout is to replace only for the water tower and the courthouse expansion. Yeah, the handout replaces the water tower and courthouse expansion that Ramona's going to speak to.
Okay.
I apologize for the handouts, but we didn't have this information until after the packets went out.
Okay.
So I'll just update you on what happened with the water tower. We opened bids on the 19th, and the low bid came in at $1,475,125. So the line item below that, the water line school projects, the water line was actually moved and is being done as part of the construction of the school project, even though it was budgeted under the water tower, the $3 million that we budgeted for the water tower. So if we take the low bid, the total estimated project cost will be $2,141,366.40. But there has been some issues with the low bid. We're actually checking some references. They didn't have their bid bond wasn't filled out properly. So we're working with the engineer to do the reference checks and everything and make sure that he's going to recommend that we go with the low bid. So if we go with the low bid, there's about $800,000 savings in that project. So that's good news. The estimated completion date, we're still looking at June 1st. The school project was actually stretched out to allow for this tower to be completed because they can't get their certificate of occupancy until we have this tower in operation. So when we sent it out for bids, we specified that it had to be finished by the end of May of 18. So.
Good. I think they're planning on opening in September of that year, so it needs to be done.
Right. Was there any questions on that one? All right. The courthouse expansion, the only update was that we sent bids out on last Friday, the 21st of April, and the bids will be opened on the 23rd of May. And we're still looking at completion for March of 18. So. Any questions on that?
Questions? Again, I'm really nervous about this one. If I had one project, I guess because we held it back to put out for bid while the judges decided what they needed in their offices. So, you know, construction costs seem to have gone up.
And
so,
we did get a construction estimate from the engineer, and it was about $200,000 over where we started. So.
Is the judge available for consultation about a loan?
I don't think he can tell us to do some things. I don't think he has to consult us very often. So anyway, we look forward to getting that one back. So thank you.
All right.
Any other questions for that? Okay. Tom, you going to take the next project?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost my voice. I was singing earlier today.
You did a heck of a job, too, by the way.
Appreciate that. Sorry for your ears as well.
I hate to tell you, don't take up a second career.
Just to make sure everybody is on the same page, I'm going to start with the CAD project. The total budget for the project is $150,000. The bond, it should be listed as $600,000. Grant is $150,000. And I'm going to move down to the site visits, where we made visits to 5 centers, 3 already on April 18th, and tomorrow morning, we're leaving at 7, to visit 2 more to look at the places that have the vendors that we've selected in our process. Our visits so far have been very educational, and the team has learned a lot. I have nothing further on the CAD update for that.
All right.
The LMR, Lamel Radio, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, the 10.36, the 80,000, I mean, excuse me, 90,000 A&E budget, and then I'd like to go down to tonight, the board has moved on a resolution on 37 to move forward on another contract for an AD firm. And also like to state that the SCS, the broadband, working with on modification towers and working with a contractor now to make the modifications needed to put the broadband equipment on the tower. So there's a structural analysis done, and as a result of that structural analysis, modifications were needed to the Mitchell Road Tower. Those towers proposals have come in, the specs, and those increases in strengthening of the tower will be made so that the broadband will be moved forward. And we are not, repeat, not slowing up the broadband. We're moving very fast as we can on that.
Good. Any questions? Perfect.
So starting on page 175 is Charlotte's financial report that she does, and she doesn't have it in front of her, I can tell, so.
I'm just going to briefly speak on that. At the end of every month, we posted online that has the status of what we've spent, the vendors, and the balance of either if we had any cash funded, because we did have some, we had some cash to the projects, as well as the bond balances. And I believe it's around 51 million is the balance, if I can remember off the top of my head. It is published on the website for citizens to also view.
Any questions? It's pretty detailed. If you follow from 175 forward, it tells you exactly who the vendor was and how much they were paid and all those things. Thank you. You know, I guess what we look for is, you know, how are we doing compared on target for budget? You know, as Mr. Tucker keeps reminding us, we need to make sure they come in below budget or on budget, not over budget. So, thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to item 10I, status update on strong waste program found on page 185. Ramona, you're going to take this?
Yes, I am. I sent in a presentation, and it's pretty detailed. It's got a lot of information, but I'm just going to try to skip through because you guys were all here for the history of it and where the program started last September. And last November, you guys actually approved for us to implement this new program with a new fee structure and a sampling schedule. That ordinance did not change the limits that we specified for those contaminants. It just changed how we were charging for them and the schedule. So the limits that were set were existing previous, and they were in the ordinance, they just weren't being enforced. So the status of the program, when you guys approved it last September, or actually it was in November that you approved the ordinance, you requested a 6-month period to kind of assess where it was and not to fine the people for non-compliance. We kind of wanted to give the commercial accounts a chance to adjust if they were out of compliance. They were still required to do the sampling, but if they were out of compliance, we were going to work with them to try to get them in compliance. However, we did say that the fines that were outlined in Appendix A, which was $100 a day, or $100 plus $10 a day when they missed the sampling. So although we weren't assessing fines for noncompliance, we were requiring that they do the testing, and that if they missed the testing, that we would issue fines for that. So we sent out letters to 38 commercial accounts, and in the letter we requested that they do biological testing and metals testing. Metals testing was something new that we hadn't done before, and it was kind of to assess where we were with the metals in the wastewater. The metals were addressed in section 80-117, which is restricted wastes. Metals don't have a fine associated with them. they actually have a program where if they're out of compliance with metals, they have to start mitigating, and they have to develop a program to get the metals within compliance. So as of last month, well, I'll give you the results. We mailed the letters out December 7th. And in January, we received 10 of 38. In March, we received 9 of 38. That's the people that's actually sent in their samples. And of the 10 and the 9, 3 of those were county, 3 of them were schools. So that's how many commercial accounts
Mr. Chairman.
submitted.
Yes, Mr. Williams, go ahead.
Ramona, would you like questions now?
Sure.
You and I have already talked. We had that conversation where the first results were abysmal, and the second results requesting people to comply was worse than the first. Explain to us what you did in between the first notification and the second notification that caused an actual reduction in compliance and people responding.
The first, in January, we had a couple people that called in about it, and we kind of were a little bit lenient on that one. And we didn't really react because the timing from when they actually got the letter to when they were required to have the test results in was really limited. It was only a month time, and they really didn't have time. So we just kind of chalked that up to that they didn't have time to do it. So now in March, when we had even worse results, now we're going to issue a letter this month to all the customers, the commercial accounts, and we also are going to follow that up with a telephone conversation. Because we didn't want them to say, oh, I didn't get the letter. If we talk to them and they have the letter, then we have backup and justification, so.
Well, that's where I'm headed, because, you know, we basically went through January through March, that's 3 months, where people just snubbed their nose at us. You know, we had, you know, approximately 1/4 of the people responding. So my question is, if you send them a letter and you're going to do the personal phone call, my question is to the county attorney, what constitutes notification? Phone call, conversation, can that be substantiated?
Well, I would prefer something in writing, obviously, because the phone call, people go, well, we didn't get it, or you didn't talk to the right person, or.
That's where I'm headed. So what I would like for you, Ramona, is to talk to the county attorney about what constitutes notification. Because I think the board wants us, I've talked to the chairman, I know he does, I think we want people to conform to this ordinance.
Correct.
And we don't want, you know, people saying I wasn't notified or I didn't get the information. So I want to put a stake in the ground, make sure that we have something that constitutes notification that has teeth in it.
And we plan on sending the letters out and the telephone conversation. And in the letter, it's actually going to tell them that they will be issued the fines for missing the previous sampling.
Tom, you want to weigh in on any recommendations you would have?
I'll be glad to work with Ramona on,
Okay.
she can just send it to me before she sends it out, and we'll make sure it's good.
Okay.
So Ramona, I spoke with a couple of businesses who were very confused. And I know Johnny stopped by and spoke with one, and I think you spoke with one of the other owners. And we could say, well, this is consistent with what takes place in other localities, Chesterfield or wherever, but if they've never run a restaurant or a business in Chesterfield, this is just entirely new to them. Would it benefit us to kind of have some type of just seminar that they could, as a business owner, could come to, maybe it's an hour presentation to understand the whys and the how comes and the purposes behind this. So it's just not something that's just an irritant for you as a business owner, having owned a business. There are many regulations and that you have to follow, and sometimes understanding the whys and how comes. So if that's something maybe that would be beneficial, because I know the two businesses that I spoke with didn't quite understand exactly what they were testing for and why they should be testing and all those things. And Johnny did a great job, and you did a great job coaching those two businesses. But you know, maybe that's something we considered also.
Yeah, we could do that too. That maybe I'll.
But I do think it needs to have, you know, I'll say with Ms. Williams, does need to have some type of, you know, return receipt, whatever you want to call it, so that you know you did, you know, because I didn't speak to, you can call and speak to somebody, you could say, I'm the owner, but he could actually be the cook. So, you know, so a return receipt might be the best thing to know, that they have been notified, and that this is something we are going to enforce, because we have to.
Right.
So,
I agree, Ms. Chairman.
so continue forward, please.
Okay. So on the results, you can see that, and the difference between the 10 and the 9, and you'll see down at the bottom, it's 3 of 7, 3 of 7. That's because I took the schools out of there, because the schools, the 3 samples that were from the schools, because the schools we treat differently. We don't fine them. We just work with them on mitigation.
So, looking on page 189, so the schools failed CBOD, TSS, TKN, and copper. And
In March.
and then they failed TSS and copper, so.
Right.
You know,
Well,
quit.
Mona, I'm gonna suggest that because we don't find them, that's not the issue. Remember, we talked about that we wanted to know as a board, and we expect them to come into compliance.
Right.
Because how can we, government, mandate something on the private sector if government is not even doing their responsibility, or not meeting their responsibilities?
And I will say historically, and even since I've been here, Russell Wilson has been working with me on this, and they have been submitting their samples all along. So we've been working with them, and we know where they are, and when they have issues, we look at how they're operating and their floor wax and things like that were causing them to fail in the past.
That was a couple of boards ago, when this thing magically just went away and died, and nobody knew that it wasn't being done anymore.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on in between. What I don't want is, if we're going to have this policy, this ordinance, let's make sure that we're enforcing it, and we're enforcing it equally across all parties that have been identified that need to be, participating. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Now, I'm very discouraged that, the compliance on people just responding, we've gone to, 10 out of 38 to 9 out of 38, and we're only getting around to talking about how we can get proper notification to these people so that they can say, well, I really didn't get notified, so I really don't know what's going on. Because in your letter, you explain all this, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
If I'm going from recall.
Yes.
So if we're going to do this, let's make sure that people are notified, and let's make sure that everybody, including schools, is participating. And if they're out of compliance, I'm not saying we fine them, but I want them to come into compliance. Okay?
Right.
I would just like to clarify that the schools, even when, in that period of time where you said that we dropped the program, the schools continue to do testing and working with our staff. So the schools has never stopped the testing. And I also want to point out, from January to March, there's improvement in the schools. So the schools will sometimes be out of compliance, and most of the time they're in compliance.
That's good.
So I want you to know that. They've never
Pat,
stopped
I appreciate
testing.
that. I appreciate that, because I feel better.
Right, just
I feel a lot better. So the schools have been,
All along,
they
always
never
tested.
stopped.
Yes,
Correct.
historically, they've always submitted their samples.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, they have.
Thank you. That's an important piece of information to have. And all the schools, not just some of them, but all the schools are reporting.
Right.
Okay, good. So we're setting an example.
Right.
We hope.
Good.
But only the schools that go into our septic system, only the schools that go into our sewer system are tested,
Right.
which is not all the schools. You
All-
had said all the schools were being tested. Are all the schools going into our sewer system? I don't think
no,
Pocahontas is.
Right.
Correct, okay?
Right.
Right. So
You're right.
okay, so only the
You're right.
ones going into our sewer system. And Pocahontas is on its own septic
you're right.
system, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Both Pocahonases, the
Both
middle and the,
Pocahontas, all
and
right.
the, and the elementary.
I think you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So the next steps, I already covered that we were going to send out a letter and do the telephone calls. And that fines, in that letter, we're going to tell them that fines will be assessed in the September bill. So really, the customers have 4 months starting now to come into compliance. So the customers that have not been submitting their samples are really at a disadvantage, because when they finally submit, they're not going to have time to correct their results to mitigate and to make it better. So. And I wanted to cover the metals testing separate because metals are considered a restricted waste, and it's in a different section than the strong waste. So I think that's part of the confusion, is that there's these two different sets of information, and the metals is really more for industrial customers, and the strong waste is for commercial accounts. There's no fines with restricted waste. If you exceed the limit for restricted waste or the metals, you have to develop a mitigation plan, and this is part of an industrial pre-treatment program, which we don't have any industrial accounts, and we're not required to have a pre-treatment program. So when we sent out the letters and got them to send in their metal results, that was just kind of to get a baseline on where we were with that with our commercial accounts. So we looked at the surrounding localities on their limits, Chesterfield and Henrico, and where they were with their metals. But it's the way that metals, the limit is determined, is really based on how your facility can treat it. So it's based on the capabilities of our wastewater plants to remove them. And they're removed by hydroxide precipitation. So we can't really compare ourselves with Chesterfield or Henrico because their plants can treat it a lot better than we can. They have more capabilities. And I did this one slide for a definition of an industrial user, but really all it tells us is that we don't have any industrial users based on the volume of water and the definition. According to state code, we don't have any industrial users. So when we were looking at the metals, we really were targeting the copper and the zinc, which is what we are regulated at our plants. We're regulated on those two specifically because they're very hard on the amphibians and fish. So the limits in the drinking water can be higher than actually what we discharge from the plant because the drinking water doesn't affect the fish and the amphibians. So that's why our limit is lower for the plants.
Well, we treat the fish better than we treat the children in the school.
Well, it doesn't affect us like it does them. They're more susceptible to it. So I think I covered all that. So on the copper and zinc limits, most of the people that submitted the samples exceeded the limits that we had set. So we looked at other localities just to see where we were, and our limits are extremely low. And it's because of where we're discharging. We're not discharging to the James River. Our streams that we're discharging to are streams. So, and they're both removed by hydroxide precipitation. There was one metal that was exceeded the mercury, and it was the dental office exceeded it. It wasn't extremely out of compliance, but EPA is actually developing standards specific to that industry. So, and they're still working on that. They haven't implemented that yet. Based on the information that we've received, we had a couple recommendations. And this is kind of why I kind of wanted your direction on where we go with this, because any of these changes now will require a public hearing. So I just kind of wanted to get some direction from you. So our recommendations were to keep the strong waste limits as they were and the fines as per the ordinance changes in November of 2016. But we want to add the zinc and the copper testing to the strong waste limit. So we still want it in the industrial metals testing, but we want it in the strong waste, although there won't be any fines associated with it because we exceed these limits a lot on at our plant. And we've exceeded the zinc a couple times, and we've got non-compliance letters from DEQ because we're very limited on how we can treat that. But one of the things that we are implementing that's going to help with this is at the Dutoid plant, which takes the majority of our commercial waste. We're actually in the process now, we're going to start construction on a magnesium hydroxide feed system, which will improve our capabilities to treat zinc and copper. So that was where we thought that it would be better to increase our limit, because we have been treating these limits. We just didn't know they were in there. So, and with the magnesium hydroxide, we'll increase the amount that we can take out. So we had recommended that we increase the copper limit to 0.10 milligrams per liter. It was at 0.031 milligrams per liter, and almost every sample that we received exceeded that. But we haven't been exceeding that from our plant, so we're capable of treating this. And with the Deutoid magnesium hydroxide system, it will be able to treat more. And we did recommend keeping the zinc limit at 0.30 milligrams per liter. The copper and zinc violations will follow the requirements of testing as in Section 80-122. So then the next couple slides is just how these recommendations would show up in the code. So the changes that we would have to make to the code. So I'm not going to go into detail on those because it's just really wording and information that's.
Questions? Can we? So Ramona, when the letters came out, several businesses called me, and one of the questions, I think there were some subsequent letters that came out from companies that did this testing, and there were ranges in cost or some language in there that tried to scare them to make sure that they use their services versus somebody else's services. Would it benefit our business community in some way if we were to have a list of vendors that possibly they could use versus, you know, this, because what had happened in one instance, the gentleman was scared to death by the vendor who sent him a letter, more so than what we sent them. So.
And we do give out vendors that do the testing and the sampling and the testing. We have given those lists out.
Okay.
And the one that you're talking about, I remember that letter, and we actually got a copy of that letter. I think that individual contacted our office and asked who we sent the letters to, and we gave him the information of who we sent it to.
So without being too much involved, would it benefit us maybe if we were to try to negotiate some type of cost that our business community could take advantage of? Because, you know, again, as a small business owner who, you know, has to test.
And we had talked about that as well. Johnny and I talked about that. We talked about actually setting like an RFP for these services, or an IFB out for these services, and the county actually controlling that and paying for it, and then charging it to the commercial accounts in their bill. So charge them for the testing. It just gives us more control over it, but there's the accountability with the dollar amount.
In the one instance, the one individual was testing just as much as the KFC was testing, and his intensities were not anything near, and so the cost of borne to his operation was much greater than it was for somebody who was turning out a ton more grease and chicken and food and all the other things. So those were real applications. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with us, doing it that way. I don't know if we want to get involved with having to collect the monies and manage the monies and all the other things. So, we got enough on hand.
The only way to get a competitive bid, I think, for those services would be to send out an RFP.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
One of the other things we talked about, Ramona, is, for individuals, the mom and pop shop that had the one grease trap, if they were in compliance after the first testing or the second testing, that they would be allowed not to test, subsequent quarters, something like that.
If it was a small, well, there was some places that, for instance, Fighting Creek Park and Company 1 and Company 2, that we actually tested that, but they don't have any significant wastewater flow, and they don't do cooking, and it's not a restaurant. So I think if they fall under one of the categories that we list, like a hospital or a restaurant, then they would have to continue the testing. And based on their results, we haven't had anybody that's complied yet, so.
Well, I was thinking about the individual that met with you and myself, and that was, you know, the individual was using, you know, cooking on a limited basis. And he was interested in seeing some type of situation where if he was in compliance, you know, with the first 2 testing periods or something like that, that he wouldn't, or going back, Ramona, he even talked about testing specifically just for one thing, not for the whole spectrum.
And that's more.
Which would reduce the testing cost.
Yeah, that's more what we're looking at, is
Okay.
actually taking the metals and some of those requirements out, but we want to stay with those.
If it's grease, be grease specific for the testing and exclude the other things that are extraneous to the business operation.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So basically, you're asking us, do we want to advertise, to hold a public hearing on the suggested changes that you're proposing?
Well, and I did get some direction with working with the county attorney, so I will work with the county attorney to
Okay.
get that verification process. But then, yeah, so probably in June, maybe a public hearing if you
Okay.
guys want to go forward with the changes.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Go ahead.
ask a question? When do we want to go then if people haven't, we've got a significant number of people that haven't complied, and now we're going to go back again and try to get them the notification that they need. So we're in April now. So when are you going to recommend that this be enforced?
It would be in their September bill.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
So I'm tracking with you, Mr. Williams. I'm hoping that the paper will pick up on this, and maybe some of the business community will definitely pick up the phone and call our Public Works Department and speak to Johnny or Ramona and go, wow, I shoved this letter in the corner and I wasn't sure what to do with it, but can you help me understand what I need to do? So as quickly as we can get it in front of us, let's do it. Again, I have to look at this. If we're going to pass an ordinance and not discipline, then, you know,
No point.
we have no enforcement. So I think we need to do that and be fair as we can, but yet enforce the ordinances that are there. So, comments, questions, staff?
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So as Mr. Norvig said, we all learn about new things every night. So we're now into solid waste. So thank you, Ramona, for what you brought to us. So, okay, we'll now move on to item 14, our second public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Please sign in after you speak or before you speak. Thank you.
Jamie Timberlake, 1450 Schroeder Road. Didn't jump on the bandwagon earlier to speak to Ms. Weiler, but wanted to just echo my same thing from earlier. I appreciate working with her for the last 3 or 4 years, and truly believe that I learned a lot and I'm a better person and a better public servant for having worked with her. So thank you. Second thing is, and I don't know if I caught on to what happened a little earlier during the tax thing, but from that back corner, and I don't think it was done purposely, but Ms. Cabell was cut off and did not get to speak and is owed an apology. I heard you, Mr. Chairman, but I mean, the guys, you started a conversation, I don't know what it was about, but from that corner, it didn't look right. And it made me feel a certain way that I felt I had to come speak to you. She's owed an apology for what happened in that discussion. So take it for what it's worth.
Thank you, Mr. Timberlake.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Don Silberbauer, 1426 Donovan Mill Lane. We've had our differences of opinion over the past 12 or so months between Powhatan Citizens Alliance and some of the things that we've heard and seen and done within the county. But I think that's debate and opposition in some cases is a good thing. It's healthy. But I do want to pass on some credit where credit is due. Couple things. I wanted to thank you, Mr. Melton. Last year, you commissioned an audit committee of 2 people. This year, whether it's you personally or in coordination with the rest of the board, you've decided that a 2-person committee wasn't really satisfactory, and you've increased that to 5 members, 2 from the school board and 1 citizen at large. I think that's a very, very positive step, and thank you. Second, I want to thank you also for having the courage and the leadership to reduce the real estate tax number by $0.015. It's not a great amount, but even a little bit helps. And I think we kind of, we're here in the western end of the county, and I don't know where all of you live, but we tend, when we leave our homes, we don't tend to go west, we tend to go east. And going east, we don't tend to see a lot of the people that live in this county that are living very modestly. We tend more to see people that are more in our peer group that are more affluent, as Mr. Nordvig had said earlier, and Mr. Bailey as well. We tend to lose sight that there's a lot of people that are struggling just to keep afloat. And $40, $50, or $100 a year in tax money is much better left in their pocket to pay for heating in the winter, a car payment, food on the table, than perhaps it is in the hands of government. And I don't like to call you all government, but that's kind of what you are. We've seen what can happen in Washington, and we've seen that people in Washington tend to lose sight of their roots and where they came from and where the rest of the country is. Don't want that to happen here, and I'll give you some example. My wife and I moved here 14 years ago from the Northeast. We lived in Connecticut for 35 years. And I will tell you, we had a fairly modest home, 1 acre, 2,000 square foot colonial, and we were paying just shy of $8,000 a year in taxes. And we had no more services than what we have here. So, Mr. Nordvig, you had mentioned about the creep, where $40 here or $20 there, and sooner or later, you're up to an astronomical number. People can't afford to retire in that part of the country. They tend to come south. So that's why we're here. We're going to be here for a very long time, probably till I'm pushing up daisies. Maybe that's not to your, maybe it's to my detriment or your detriment if we stay having our meetings. But I just wanted to pass that on. It can happen, and before you know it, you don't realize how fast it can happen. But the good things that have been provided for the county last year, hard work on this budget this year is much appreciated. We don't often take the time to say that. Thank you very much. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, and again.
Thank you, Mr. Silbauer, for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, I'll close the second public comment period. County Attorney comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's an item on my agenda. I'm asking for a motion. We had 2 public hearings scheduled involving a family division that had been done that was not done correctly and properly. The gentleman who did the family division has prepared a deed of vacation vacating that division and has presented it to the board. It's acceptable to me, so what I'm asking for is a motion authorizing the chairman to sign that vacate deed, and then that'll be recorded at the courthouse, and those family division lots will be merged back into one lot that they originally were in.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's something we've been following for a while. So, do we need to do a roll call vote on this? No. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Any other comments, Tom?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll then move on to County Administrator's comments.
I have no comments.
Pat, your last meeting, and you're
Not
not
even
gonna have a
goodbye.
comment like sayonara, you crazy people?
I'm out of here.
Board comments?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of quick ones.
Yep.
The intersection at Misha at the entrance to the state park will be shovel-ready on June the 1st. They project it'll be finished by fall. so they're getting ready to go. Secondly, Mr. Melton and I will be holding a joint town hall meeting with VDOT engineers for the 4th and the 5th districts at some time in the immediate future. VDOT is planning to replace the bridge on Route 13 at Saleh Creek, and it comes down to interdicting traffic for a while. They're also going to be changing the major bridge at on Cartersville Road at Deep Creek, right at the entrance to Bellmead, which is also going to cause some disruption. So Mr. Melton and I will be notifying, and hopefully through the press, when that is, public hearing is going to be held and where. And the final thing tonight, on a sadder note, many of you know that Clint Arrington, who was the founder and president of Lonesome Dove Equestrian Center for Disabled Veterans, passed on this past weekend. Memorial service will be held at Lonesome Dove at the Equestrian Center itself this coming Saturday at 1 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other board comments?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Angie, I'd like to apologize. If Jamie perceived it, then maybe other people perceived it. I'd also like to explain so you know what's going on. We were actually trying to be quiet over here during your comments. I guess Chairman Melton said it best, I was confused. I thought all those votes of unanimity on cuts to reach 885 was kind of a signal that we were 5-0 going for that. So what I signaled down here was 4-1. But David thought I was holding up 6 fingers, and he said 6, and I was, no, 4-1. So we were commenting on that. So I was a little surprised and signaled that. So I apologize, and I would love to hear the rest of your comments if you'd like to make them.
I think it's a moot point at this point, Mr. Nordvig, but thank you for the offer.
Okay, well, I apologize.
Thank you. So I have a quick comment. Just Friday night in our village, we had a wonderful event that I would like to encourage more citizens to come to, and that was Village Vibe. It was raining for a little while, then it stopped, and it started, then it stopped. Probably about 100, maybe 150 people there. But if you could have watched the people and the kids that were running around and listening to the band music, had wonderful food, ice cream, and they had some cool door prizes that they were raffling off. And if you remember, all these events are sponsored by somebody and they go to local charities. This charity was the Free Clinic, and there are more Village Vibes are coming. Please go to the Chamber of Commerce website. They will know when the next event is. And let's pack it because it's a cool place. You can sit on a lawn chair, your kids are going to run around and act crazy and listen to some great music. So, thank you. Okay. Tom, are you going to take us into closed meeting?
Yes, sir. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Powhatan County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following: discussion or consideration of candidates for appointment by the county, discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, discussion or consideration of investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the government unit might be adversely affected, consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel retained or employed by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. And whereas per section of sections 2.2, 3711, A1, A3, A6, and A7 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Powhatan County does hereby authorize discussion of the aforesaid matters in closed meeting. Need that as a motion.
I make that as a motion.
I'll second that motion. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're in closed session. Thank you. I hereby reconvene this regular meeting of the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors, open meeting, and request the clerk of the board to conduct a roll call certification vote of the supervisors to be included in the minutes of this meeting.
Do you certify to the best of your knowledge that the only matters discussed in the closed meeting were public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just conducted? Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. There being no other further business for the board, this meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.